So yeah, you're seeing it right. President Donald Trump has finally deployed the National Guard to Washington, D.C., taking over policing and declaring a public safety emergency in response to concerns about rising crime. So let's break down everything in simple. What exactly President Trump just did, whether it's legal or not, and if he might take similar action in other U.S. cities. Let's begin. So, a few days ago, President Trump hinted that he might take control of D.C., right? And then, on Monday morning, he made it official in a press briefing.
This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back.
He was basically like, yeah, we're stepping in because of the crime, the savagery, the filth, and the scum. You know, he didn't hold back on the language. President Trump's main justification for the action is to address what he sees as a growing problem with crime and homelessness in D.C. Now, just to give some context, not long ago, there was a really shocking incident. A 19-year-old former Doge worker was attacked during an attempted carjacking in Washington, D.C. The guy tried to intervene when he saw a woman in distress near their car, and that's when things took a really ugly turn. A group of around 10 teens surrounded him and beat him up pretty badly. When the police got there, the teens ran off. Only 2 of them, both 15-year-olds, were arrested and charged with unarmed carjacking. But, the whole thing was so brutal that it really got a lot of people talking. And this is where President Trump comes in. He basically saw this and was like, okay, this is getting out of hand. We need to take control. So basically, Trump has really been laying into D.C.'s governance, right? He's been saying that the city is being run poorly and that the federal government could do a better job managing it. He even went to push for changes in the law to make sure juveniles involved in violent crimes can be charged as adults. Big move for sure. And now he finally went ahead and dropped the bombshell, sending around 800 National Guard troops to D.C. to help with law enforcement. So yeah, looks like he's pretty much taken control of the U.S. Capitol now. While announcing this, he said something that really stuck out to me. If Washington, D.C. is dirty, then the whole USA is dirty. Honestly, I kind of get what he means there. The Capitol should be the shining example of what the whole country represents. It should be the best of the best, you know? Here's a short clip from that moment. Pretty interesting stuff. You should check it out.
Said, my father always used to tell me, I had a wonderful father, very smart, and he used to say, son, when you walk into a restaurant and you see a dirty front door, don't go in. Because if the front door is dirty, the kitchen's dirty also. Same thing with the Capitol. If our Capitol's dirty, our whole country is dirty, and they don't respect us. So it's a very good question.
And yeah, I totally agree. A country's capital should be the place that stands out. Neat, clean, crime-free, vibrant, and of course something that makes people say, yeah, that's the Capitol. It's got to represent the country in the best way possible, for sure. Now I know, you're probably wondering, does President Trump even have the right to do this? Is it legal under the U.S. Constitution? Well, it is important to note that Washington, D.C. has a unique status as a federal district, which limits the mayor's authority and gives the federal government more power. Unlike National Guard units in states and territories, which report to their respective governors, the D.C. National Guard is under the direct control of the president. That's a key difference. So yeah, Trump actually does have the legal authority to do what he's doing. Under the Home Rule Act of 1973, the president can step in and use the D.C. police force for federal purposes if there's an emergency. Specifically, Section 740 gives the president the power to take control of the police department if he decides it's necessary due to an emergency nature. But, and this is a big, but there are limits. The president can only control the police department for 30 days without further approval. If he wants to extend that, Congress has to approve it with a joint resolution. So, technically, President Trump can't just hold on to control of the police indefinitely unless Congress agrees. And another key thing, this power only applies to the police department, not the entire city government. So, it's pretty focused on law enforcement and doesn't mean Trump can take full control of the whole city. Now, Attorney General Pam Bondi has given direct control over the Metropolitan Police Department, and Terrence Cole has been appointed as the interim commissioner. So yeah, it's all legal in this case, based on the unique status of D.C. and the powers granted under the Home Rule Act. But there are still checks and balances in place, even if they are limited. Now, obviously, President Trump's action has sparked a lot of criticism and debate. Trump argues that the takeover is necessary to fight a surge in violent crime and urban decay in Washington, D.C. But D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and Attorney General of Columbia, Brian Schwalb, disagree, pointing to official statistics showing a significant decline in violent crime in D.C. in 2024 and 2025. Violent crime reportedly fell by 26% in the first 7 months of 2025, after a 35% drop in 2024, and overall crime dropped by 7%. Now, this data comes straight from the D.C. Police Department, but President Trump isn't having any of it. He's fired back, calling all those numbers fake. If you head over to the official White House website, you'll find a statement saying that D.C. crime is out of control. There's also crime data listed, and interestingly, it says fake news journalists and politicians go out of their way to deny or downplay the situation, but the reality is that D.C. is anything but safe. Now, whether or not the reality is as bad as it's being portrayed is something people living in D.C. could tell you about. But even the D.C. Police Union chairman, Greg Pemberton, has weighed in, claiming that crime in D.C. is out of control.
Let's bring in D.C. Police Union Chairman Gregory Pemberton. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. So from your view, is this necessary?
Well, look, we completely agree with the president that crime in the District of Columbia is out of control and something needs to be done with it.
Now critics are also accusing Trump of manufacturing a crisis just to expand presidential power in a city that's heavily Democratic, which adds more fuel to the fire. And honestly, there are legitimate concerns about what this increased federal presence might look like. Who exactly will be targeted, how aggressive the federal law enforcement will be, and whether or not military personnel might overstep their bounds when it comes to local policing. Now, you might be wondering, military personnel? Is Trump planning to bring in the army to D.C.? Well, no one really knows what Trump will do, but yes, he has stated that he would bring in the military if necessary. Under the Posse Comitatus Act, this is technically possible, though the law generally limits the military's role in domestic law enforcement. But no one really knows how Trump might use this if he decides to. Actually, there's a loophole, or maybe not even a loophole, but an exception. The Insurrection Act, which lets the president to deploy military forces to suppress an insurrection in a state. And Trump can do this without state approval if, for some reason, the state is unable or unwilling to act. This could apply to D.C., and Trump could, in theory, use it if he wanted to. So yeah, technically, he could deploy the military in D.C. if he really wanted to. Now it's a huge deal. There are big questions about whether this would be overreach or a necessary step in the name of security. There's a lot of uncertainty around how this would actually play out, especially since D.C. is a federal district with different laws and regulations compared to the rest of the country. Also, President Trump has made it pretty clear he's definitely taking a firm stance on homelessness in Washington, D.C. He said that the homeless need to move out immediately, and he's pushing for their removal from the city. And if you look at the homelessness situation in D.C., President Trump's stance makes sense. D.C. has the highest per capita homelessness rate in the U.S., with 73 homeless individuals per 10,000 residents. Many residents and business owners in D.C. have expressed frustration, citing rising crime, public drug use, and increasingly aggressive behavior among certain individuals living on the streets. In several documented cases, individuals suffering from homelessness and addiction have been involved in violent incidents, fueling public safety concerns. So, yeah, homelessness is a big problem in D.C., and President Trump is really taking significant steps to address the crisis. But now, the bigger question is, will President Trump stop at D.C.? Well, now many experts are speculating that Trump could try similar interventions in other cities or states. Like a few months ago, he deployed National Guard troops to California, and now there's a chance he might want to take control of more places. For example, New York could be next on his radar. If Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York City, wins the upcoming election, you can bet Trump will be all over it. He's already openly threatened to intervene in New York City affairs, like arresting people or cutting federal funding, if Mamdani wins and pushes policies President Trump doesn't agree with. So yeah, things are definitely getting complex. The big question now is whether Trump might start taking control of local police forces. It could set a dangerous precedent if a president can just step in whenever they want, overriding local authority. It's one thing to offer federal support in times of crisis, but it's another thing entirely to take direct control. That could change the balance of power between federal and local governments and maybe even spark some pretty intense legal battles down the road. So what do you think about all this? Is President Trump going too far with these interventions? Or do you think he's just trying to get things back on track in cities that are struggling? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. It's definitely a situation with a lot of layers. Thanks for watching. Hope you all have a great day.